Hello everyone and welcome. I'm excited to have you here today. In this presentation, we're going to explore input and output in Python. The title is Input and Output in Python, and we'll also look at understanding how Python handles these operations behind the scenes. Over the next few slides, we'll cover the basics of input and output, see some practical examples, and discuss best practices. So let's get started and discover how Python makes data interaction simple and efficient. Let's talk about input and output in Python. When we say input, we're referring to taking data from the user. This is how our programs can interact with people and get the information they need. On the other hand, output is all about showing results back to the user, making sure they see the information they requested or the results of their actions. Now, Python makes working with input and output quite straightforward because it has built-in functions specifically designed for this purpose. These functions simplify the process, allowing us to focus on the logic of our programs without worrying about complex input-output handling. Understanding input and output is essential because they form the foundation of how our programs communicate with users, which ties directly into creating more interactive and user-friendly applications. Now, let's talk about how we take input in Python. The main function you'll use is input. This function allows us to ask the user for some information, like their name or age, and then store that information in a variable. The syntax is pretty simple. You write the variable name, an equal sign, and then call input, with a prompt message inside the parentheses. For example, variable equals input, enter something. One important thing to remember is that regardless of what the user types, input always treats that data as a string. So if you're expecting a number, you'll need to convert that string into a number type using functions like int or float. For example, if you want to get the user's name, you could write name equals input, enter your name. And if you want to get their age as an integer, you'd write age equals int, input, enter your age. Using typecasting is key here because it helps us work with the data in the format we need for calculations or other operations. So, in summary, input is a simple but powerful way to interact with users, but always keep in mind that the data initially comes in as a string, and sometimes you'll need to convert it accordingly. Let's take a closer look at the print function in Python. This is one of the most commonly used functions for outputting information. When we call print, we can pass in one or more objects, like strings or numbers, separated by commas. The syntax is straightforward. Print object 1, object 2. One key point to remember is that each object you pass in is printed in order, with a space between them by default. Now the print function also has parameters that control how the output appears. The first is sep, which stands for separator. By default, it's a space, but you can change it to anything you like, such as a dash or a comma. The second is end, which determines what gets printed at the very end of your output. By default, it's a newline, meaning each print statement starts on a new line. But you can change that to anything else, like an exclamation mark or an empty string, depending on what you want. For example, if we write print hello, world, sep equals, end equals, it will output hello world, all on one line. This flexibility makes print a powerful tool for customizing how your program communicates with the user. Remember, understanding how to control output is essential, especially as we build more interactive programs and applications. Let's talk about different ways to format output in Python. First up is string concatenation, which is pretty straightforward, using the plus sign to join strings together. For example, you can write print hello plus name, and it will display a greeting followed by the name. Next, we have f-strings, which were introduced in Python 3.6. These are really handy because they allow you to embed variables directly into your string using curly braces. So, instead of concatenation, you can write print f-hello name, and it will automatically insert the value of name into the string. Then there's the format method. This is a versatile way to format strings, especially when you have multiple variables. You write print hello, format name, and the curly braces act as placeholders that get replaced by the arguments inside format. To illustrate this more, consider an example where you want to display both a person's name and age. You could write print fname, name, age, and it will neatly print both pieces of information in one line. All these methods are useful, and choosing between them depends on the context and your Python version. They help make your output more readable and dynamic, which is essential for creating clear, professional programs. All right, let's wrap things up with a quick summary. First, input is used to take user input, and it's always in the form of a string. So whenever you need data from the user, you use input. Next, print is what we use to display output, whether it's a message or a result. Now, if you're working with numbers, keep in mind that you'll need to do some type casting to convert those strings into numeric types like integers or floats. Lastly, for output formatting, you have several options. Concatenation, the format, method, or f-strings, which are really handy for creating clear and readable outputs. Remember, these concepts are all about making your programs interactive and user-friendly, tying back to the overall theme of writing effective and efficient code.